Are you willing to accept Christ's invitation to know Him more intimately, love Him more intensely, and follow Him more closely, and then go out into the world and live His good news? If you say yes, then you could be the 13th apostle. Join Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey, the odd couple of Catholic radio, as they ride the radio waves 2 by 2 to share the goodness, beauty, and truth of Jesus Christ and His church. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the 13th apostle.
St. Paul tells us that the church is the pillar and foundation of truth in his first letter to Timothy. What happens when that pillar and foundation, theologically and literally, are no more? Welcome, friends, to the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, beautiful, and true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. This is Tom Caffrey with my indefatigable, indomitable, and indefensible partner, Dan Duddy. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing okay. Thanks, Tom. How are you? You good?
That's not true that you are indefensible.
Yeah.
I would come to your defense.
Oh, I know.
I can remember I was in I'll say a near brawl. It was after a funeral.
Oh,
One of the sons. So the woman was she was in her late 40s, I think. Late 40s, early 50s. But anyway, so she died in the funeral. And after the funeral, one of her children, he's a real hothead, this kid. And he's in his mid-20s, I think. He disrespected somebody who had nothing to do with the funeral. It was out in the street and whatnot. And next thing you know, it was like temperatures flared and everybody's in each other's face and whatnot. And I went up to the guy who was offended. I broke into where people were and I got between a couple of people, one guy and him. And I said to him, "You're right." I said, "You are right." I said, "He should never have said that to you. The fact that he's so upset about his mother passing does not give him the right, to offend you and offend your wife who was there and all that stuff." But I was really, I guess, in a way, I was defending my friend.
yeah. It was reverse psychology, is what it sounds like. So go ahead.
Yeah, because my friend and he were like nose to nose, and so I just kind of shoved my way in there because it wasn't going to end well. It was nuts, and the kid was wrong. And you would have been like that guy. Somebody offended you and Maura, your wife, and so anyway. So I would still say that was somewhat of a defense, but defense of the greater good. So yeah, I would do that for you if you were in the wrong, which I can't imagine. But
I want to know what happened to the potential fight. How did it end?
no, they just got and the cops showed up and whatnot. So
Okay.
you see, so in other words, it was a classic Irish funeral.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. I was going to ask you what the ethnicity of the group was.
The ones who were getting ready to fight were the Irish, and there was an Italian. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I guess that's kind of related to our topic of
Well, you're gonna have to prove that to me. But
most of the people went to that funeral
Mm,
rarely entered the doorway of a church, even though
mm,
they were all raised Catholic.
sure, I've seen that.
And our topic tonight is, well, it's not a good one, but there definitely is. Well, there's always hope. Hope is not optimism. Optimism is superficial. Hope is deep, deep and far, far ranging. But we're talking about the desacralization of church buildings. It could be parishes as well, but we're going to focus a little bit more on church buildings. And unfortunately, that's happening a lot, certainly in Europe, especially in Western Europe. I think it's happening the most in Great Britain.
Mm,
I mean, they seem to be going down the tubes on Greece, but it's also happening a lot in the US,
yeah.
and especially in the former Catholic strongholds, the historic strongholds of the Northeast and the Midwest.
Hmm.
The hardest part, though, is, in my opinion, and this is an opinion I think is objectively true, is that certainly in Europe, many of the churches are being it's still a small percentage, but many of them, and too many, are being used now, turned into mosques.
Mm,
And that's on this because of their outrageously stupid, self-inflicted wounds of mass immigration from countries where the residents, the citizenry, don't have anything in common other than being human beings with, we'll just say Europe. A great percentage of them are young. Unfortunately, a great percentage of the young in Europe, young Europeans, aren't enthusiastic about their faith, whereas the young Muslims are very enthused about their faith. Part of their mission, part of their joy is when they can take over a church.
Yeah.
That's a power move for them. And this is less directed at, in fact, it's not really directed at Muslims, Islam at all. It's directed at Christians.
Yeah, Tom, the from my understanding in researching going into this evening, and you had wanted to talk about this topic, and I see the passion in what you're saying, and going overseas and bringing up this situation with mosques. My understanding is that the Vatican weighs in or has laid down. I know it's up to the archdiocese to make their decisions. I think ultimately it's on the parishes, right? I think the parish is kind of a sub, I'll just say, business of the archdiocese itself. Kind of stands independent of the archdiocese. But it falls under the deconsecration or the repurposing. Let's go to the repurposing of the church. Falls under, it cannot be for sordid or profane purposes, or other purpose deemed inappropriate by the overseeing authorities, which starts at the parish and onward upward to the Vatican. Why would the Catholic Church allow the repurposing of the church to become a mosque? And I'm not judging the decision, but why would they allow it?
I should have clarified. The vast majority, I don't know, it might even be all of those, and certainly those in the UK, Kingdom, and or Great Britain, but in a political unit, UK, they are Anglican.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's still bad. It's not as bad because I'm Catholic and I'm not Anglican, but it's still bad, very bad. It's Christian.
Yeah, it is. It's Christian, and it's fanning the fires of antichrist forces. I totally agree with you.
But that's us, though.
It is us.
Antichrist forces
It's
is them.
absolutely us. I don't see that happening in America in what I've studied. But, well, I mean, my goodness, it's so weak over there in the areas that you just talked about. And it does come down to demographics, especially here in the United States, and it's demographic issues wherever we are in the world. That's the nature of, the mobility of, ethnicities moving from here to there for whatever their purposes are, whatever their reasons are. But yeah, I'm shocked by that. I'm very disappointed in that. I mean, we're talking about Christianity here to maybe allow a repurposing. And once again, it's not the Catholic Church. I'm glad you clarified that. But into museums for Christianity or some sort of keeping Christianity alive in some even small way. In America, what's happening in the repurposing, from what I've read, which is somewhat pleasing. It's never pleasing to see churches getting boarded up. I see that it's stated profoundly that there are no profane or sordid repurposing, factions or energy going on in this repurposed building. And they're becoming, nice museums. I mean, there are breweries and restaurants and some really nice homes, but there is some level of, shall I say, a lingering, a residual responsibility to the building itself because it was once, secularized, a full-blown active Catholic Church. Mm-hmm.
Taking it back home in the US, there's been, which is it's very heartening. So this would be kind of like a good news. So let's say it's a bad news, good news type of thing, is that the number of Catholics, so we'll say registered or identified Catholics, they should be one and the same, but not always. Everybody has to be registered in a parish by your geographical place. And obviously you identify as a Catholic, you are a Catholic. You don't go to your geographical parish. Do you get envelopes in the mail or something? Do you get some communication in the geographical parish, even though you don't participate in that parish?
From my local parish, I don't get anything in the mail because I'm not registered there. I'm registered in the same diocese, but I go past 4 or 5 churches to get to the church that I'm registered at. Okay. But I don't get anything from the local churches, Stan.
Okay, so you're not registered there then. Okay.
No.
So in the Southwest and the West, it's really it's booming. The number of Catholics is booming for the obvious reason: immigration from the South.
Yeah.
Right? Now it's really sobering. Well, a couple of things. Unfortunately, many of them have not registered, or they are registered but they don't participate. So the church is not as empty as many in the Northeast and in the Midwest, but they're not as full as they should be with let's put it this way, the percentage of growth in Catholics in the Southwest and in the West, and that's principally California and Texas, which is not a surprise. It's Arizona too, and New Mexico, but mainly those first three. And I mean, they're huge states, but again, they're in the South and Southwest, so that's where the immigrants are coming from. And I'm still not happy when I get press one for English, but I'm less unhappy because, like Peter Kraft, the Catholic philosopher in Boston College, which in the context of our conversation, he said he refers to BC as barely Catholic, but that's it. That is part of the problem, though. And of course, it's in the former Catholic stronghold of Boston, Massachusetts. And he said that, okay, well, let's be glad the ones that are coming into our country at least share our faith or are pretty close to faith. I mean, if they're evangelical, because the odds are if they're not Catholic, they're evangelical. And the odds are if they're evangelical, they're participating as opposed to being Catholic and being a lukewarm Catholic, like so many that unfortunately we know here in the Northeast.
Hmm.
I love our Christian brothers and sisters that come in here. I wish they would all either become Catholic or if they're Catholic, live like they're Catholic and participate.
Yeah.
So,
With that being said, and you mentioned Boston, the city of Baltimore is really on a serious decline with Catholicism as well. And we're talking about, as you talk about the Northeast. And there's a pretty cool article in the Catholic Observer that I was able to find, A Tale of Two Churches, meaning the Northeast, and as you said, the Rust Belt. I think that's what you're referring to when you say the Midwest.
mm,
I'll just read some of the stats that come from this. I find them pretty interesting, and it's actually it's a little bit it's exciting too in the shift. There's a mobilization of Catholics in the Northeast that are actually moving south and getting down into what we refer to as the Bible Belt, which I think is pretty cool. And we've actually had some guests on who were right in the heart of the Bible Belt. That remember the one priest that we had who had left the Protestant church and came in to become a priest. He was married with children, right?
mhm,
Remember that guy down in that priest down in Greenville, South Carolina. But
right.
in 1980, a combined 69% of the United States Catholic population lived in the Northeast and the Midwest. The remaining 31% were in the South and the Southwest. And then by contrast, 2019, 53% as opposed to 69% of the U.S. Catholic population lived in the South and Southwest, while the percentage of Catholics living in the Northeast plunged to 28%. The demographic shift plays out dramatically in places like the Diocese of Charlotte, North Carolina, for example, which is really traditional Bible Belt country. It's now home to nearly 428,000 Catholics, which is more than all but a handful of dioceses in the Northeast. And Las Vegas, for example, now counts a total of more than 40,000 members at just two parishes. But the article also says the church is aging, and I think we know that. And I think that you bring up a pretty hopeful fact that our immigrants are shifting that over to the positive side. But 58% of American Catholics are ages 50 and older. Here we go, Tom. But Hispanic Catholics tend to be much younger than white Catholics. Just 43% of Hispanic Catholics are 50 and older. I'm going to repeat that because that's pretty enlightening. Just 43% of Hispanic Catholics are 50 and older, compared with 68% of white Catholics. And only 14% of Hispanic Catholics are ages 65 and older, compared with 38% of white Catholics. I've gone to a couple of Spanish masses and it's exciting. You can't hear much because there's a lot of crying, a lot of children laughing, and it's I find that to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, our Spanish ministry is thriving.
Mm,
They're much more reverent in their obvious behavior. In other words, what I can see, what people can see. I don't think I've ever seen a sports jersey in
amen.
a
Mm,
Spanish mass.
hmm.
I've never seen females dressed suggestively or provocatively.
Hmm.
And the music is just as bad, unfortunately. Uh, in fact,
uh,
I was
speak your mind, Tom.
that is not gonna the music ministry is not gonna save the church. I'll tell you that. And
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
not saying
Okay.
my parish. I'm just saying it's so well known that It's well known that one surge in the Catholic world and in the US, it's not just in the US though. There's pockets in Europe and there are pockets in the UK. I just heard this. I heard a Catholic priest interviewed the other day on a podcast. A Catholic priest in Great Britain was saying that there's pockets of significant growth in young Catholics. Not all of them, but a significant percentage of them, and it still might not be a majority, but a significant percentage love the traditional Latin Mass, and that's definitely true here. That's just another fact. And yet, so we had growth, although it's relatively small in total number, it's still growing and it's very vibrant. They are doing Catholicism. I always tell people, including myself, you look at the cross, right? And it's got two beams. And the vertical beam, yes, is your relation to God, a relationship with God. And you're affirming, obviously, if you have a relation with God, you believe in God, so you affirm your belief. But there's that pesky horizontal beam where you got to have a relationship, a loving relationship with each other. You have to go out, you have to live the gospel, you have to do the corporal works of mercy, spiritual works of mercy, but definitely the spiritual works of mercy are easier than the corporal works of mercy. I think everybody knows that if everybody's honest.
Yeah.
And that's where too many people don't, it's like, well, who's your neighbor? Well, it really is your neighbor across the street. It's your neighbor that's next door. Don't make this is this abstract neighbor.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how the areas of growth in the Catholic Church, how they are with that horizontal beam of loving their neighbor as they love themselves, as they love God. So you're only an I believe Catholic. Ideally, you're an I believe and I do, whether or not you're getting married. Okay. So I
Yeah.
believe I do. That's the way it's got to be. Otherwise, you have the problem that we have now with church buildings that close, parishes that consolidate. I've been involved in several consolidations over the years, and they're
Yeah.
not
Locally.
pleasant.
Yeah.
And the main unpleasant part of it is I don't like the reasons why it's happening.
Sure. It is happening though. It's happening for different reasons. The concept of the horizontal beam is one that I love on the crucifix. That peripheral vision of us, here on earth. Really, we go vertical with our peripheral vision to see Christ and to see the glory of heaven, but horizontally, we're here to move our feet and do something about what we see. But some people are left abandoned. We have some devout Catholics who not only have to travel more because of combined churches, but we have some that are really left abandoned with now churches really far from them, and decisions have to be made. Right behind them, there's a youth that really has been crushed by the scandal and
Mhm.
has found a disregard for the Catholic Church. And it's hard to fan that fire when all that is on that horizontal beam, Tom. It's a difficult thing to come back on. The city of Boston was ground zero for the Catholic Church, and they've closed more than 60 churches and sold a lot of other properties to raise millions of dollars to settle, hundreds of victims' lawsuits. So we
And that
have,
total number, not just for that area, is in the billions with a
mm,
B.
yeah,
So I'm so glad you brought that up because that's a big reason why the church lost Ireland.
yeah,
And in rapid succession, I forget which came first. They legalized same-sex marriage and they legalized abortion. I mean, they went from one extreme, and I don't mean one end of the spectrum. That's a better way to phrase it, because I wouldn't say true Catholicism is an extreme. It's where it should be. That to me, that's the norm.
mm,
Obviously, it's not to a lot of people, but it is to me, and it is to you. It's to our listeners. But then you go from the norm to like this total bad, evil extreme. And that's because the church lost its moral standing in the public square from
yeah,
corruption. Not just, and I mean, the worst is obviously the sexual scandals.
hmm,
But a close second is all the financial scandals. I wasn't including financial scandals in that billions to pay for the crimes of the sex scandals. There's other problems that have nothing to do with sex scandals, but it's just financial. The Vatican, the problems of the Vatican, the layers of bureaucracy. It's like any bureaucracy. So this is, we got to look in the mirror. A big reason why so many problems exist in life is because people don't, they look in the mirror, but they don't really see themselves. They do see only skin deep. How's my hair? How's my face? Blah, 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 blah. How do I look? My clothes. But the mirror I'm talking about is the mirror of self-reflection,
Yeah, amen.
right? Of looking inward and
Yeah.
what
It's
is my role in this problem? And could I do something
yeah.
about
Yeah. The sheer nature of your creation has put you here. And if we don't commission ourselves into believing that, instead we point fingers, which is the ultimate way to fan the fires of compromise and rationalization, we just become so much weaker, so much more quickly. And we never ever put out the fires. I think that our Lord Jesus Christ says, set fire is trying to set fire to our feet to get accomplished. I mean, sainthood really, that's a really good visual, Tom. Sainthood really does await us in the mirror. Sainthood is in the mirror if we allow ourselves to look deeply into our reflection. There we will see sainthood, which is why we are here to spend our life, in eternity with Christ. I like that. That's very inspiring. And I liked your connection with the Catholic Church, Boston being the ground zero of the Catholic Church, the capital of the Catholic Church, and how it was had spiritual ligaments, obviously, with Boston, because the migration from Boston inward, migration from Ireland to Boston is really the reason why, a great deal of the reason why we're so strong in the Northeast. We muscled up. We muscled up big time to the point where Ireland was depending on the strength of Boston. They were feeding off the electrifying Catholicism and faith of the city of Boston. And when Boston went down, Ireland followed. How's that for a flip in the energy platforms of one becoming the energy platform over the other?
yeah, when you want to you say, okay, well, it's those sins, those evils, and when you look at the cross, so we were talking up to now, we're talking about the cross. So let's add that dimension. That's the whole basis for our faith and the existence of churches, of parishes,
Mm-hmm.
is that body that hangs on that cross. And to try to have people who walk away from the church because of the scandals and to meditate on that crucifix now on that body and say, look at him, and you will find those scandals. He has taken on all those scandals,
Mm.
and the scandals have been nailed to the cross, and you can trust him.
Yeah, and he takes him from that horizontal and he moves them inward from each of his hands. His left hand, his right hand are on the horizontal. And what does he do? Just like a vein or an artery, they travel down his arms into the core of his body, which is vertical. And he brings it upward into heaven and just takes care of all of those worries, all of those worries. And how about today? I know we record a couple days before we actually go live on Saturday, and young Charlie Kirk, right, with a real good, strong voice, a profound Christian, just doing what he should be allowed to do, gets shot right in the neck today, a couple of hours ago, as you and I speak, standing up for what is right, exercising the right to speak about what he feels is right. We'll just
That's
leave
the
it at
main
that.
thing. Yes.
Yeah. And to get, boldly shot. Why? Why? We're talking about a life, a father, a husband. My goodness. I mean, well, that's Christ. That's martyrdom, if you ask me. Yeah.
Yeah. You can, as far as, somebody's politics and what they talk about, you can believe in them, you can agree or disagree, and you have that right. You should have that right in the United States of America. And his right to life and his right to freedom of speech was taken away from him.
Yeah.
It's incomprehensible, especially in the context. I mean, you and I were talking about, yeah, there's plenty of young children who don't have a father in Ukraine or Gaza, and certainly however many died or were killed in on October 7th in Israel and many places on earth. It's just that, okay, well, this is in America. He was in a college giving a talk, and there's a certain the context of being a college and a college where you're supposed to, although that doesn't happen a lot, unfortunately, these days, but you're supposed to be able to explore the big, the complicated, the deep issues as you're forming your brain and you're forming your whole person. That's what if you're going to college, and certainly the tradition, the ancient tradition of going to college, and thanks to the Catholic Church, there is a university system, and you can certainly many more people were matured and wizened by life and who didn't go to college.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was on college and the whole tradition of college, that's part of what makes this such a horrific tragedy.
Yeah, and ironically, he's not an educated man himself, and
Oh, you mean formally educated?
yes, formally educated is what I meant to say, but he is educated, and he's definitely he's self-propelled in that area, and was always intrigued by it. God bless his soul. But there's a self-absorbed, godless intellectualism that's coming from our colleges these days because of the political footballs that are getting kicked around. So these young people are grabbing sides and they're running extremely in one direction or the other. And a good man was shot today, I think, because of it. All right.
So,
Yeah.
anything else you want to say about? I mean, oh, you could have a ciborium.
What do you mean?
You could have if your parish closes its church, if the bishop closes the church building, and there's no place to put
Oh, really?
those religious arteries. There's got to be something formal. I don't know whether you have to sign anything. It's too deep into canon law for me. I imagine you would have it in a special place near, other religious, maybe a statue or a crucifix, something like that. It's like somebody you loved died and there's an estate. What do you got to do with these things that were once very important?
Yeah. On a positive note, I want to say our church at St. Dominic's, the one I'm a parishioner at, we have totally upgraded our church. Our pastor is tremendous. He went into a deconsecrated church. It was about to be sold about 40 miles north of us. And brought this beautiful marble altar down. I'm talking like 3 walls marble, and it's just really lifted our church. That's a pretty good thing that can happen too with our churches that are falling. Now the church needs it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's finding a little bit good out of a larger bad.
Yeah, it's a large bad.
We just don't want a church closing.
Yeah.
No, but as you said, we got to face reality.
Well, the numbers are up, and they're not really that falling that badly. It's just that we're mobilizing from areas and moving onward into other areas and geographically in our country.
But they got to go to church.
They gotta go to
They got to
church.
participate. They got to participate in the church and the parish, the sacraments. The church parish was the community, was a social place. It's food pantries are still there. St. Vincent de Paul Society, all these places where people could, all these services. In addition to, that's the corporal works of mercy that the church parish would do, secondary only to the sacraments.
Yeah.
Got to maintain hope.
Yeah, we have to. We're nothing without hope. All
All
right.
right, what's coming up? Let me see if I can guess what's going up next. Your prayer intentions
With
Peter and Jimmy,
you've been
St.
listening for
Peter,
8 years.
St. Peter.
Yeah, stay tuned, folks. All right. For the Angelus first. Angelus first.
Okay. WQPH Radio. Thank you, friends, for your support, your prayers, and periodically your dough would be welcomed. Danny, God bless you, buddy.
God bless you, Tommy, and God bless you all.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?